Hello, everybody. Welcome to ULT San Diego here for the Aquarian series. Today, the title of the presentation is Yoga and Will, and that will be given to us by Shobha Sharma, PhD, our very beloved friend. So, before we begin, a reading from the Bhagavad Gita. The unwise, delighting in the controversies of the Vedas, tainted with worldly lusts and preferring a transient enjoyment of heaven to eternal absorption, whilst they declare there is no other reward, pronounce for the attainment of worldly riches and enjoyments, flowery sentences which promise rewards in future births for present action, ordaining also many special ceremonies, the fruit of which is merit leading to power and objects of enjoyment. But those who thus desire riches and enjoyment have no certainty of soul, and least hold on to meditation. The subject of the Vedas is the assemblage of the three qualities. Be thou free from these qualities, O Arjuna. Be free from the pairs of opposites and constant in the quality of sattva, free from worldly anxiety and the desire to preserve present possessions. Self-centered, uncontrolled by objects of mind or sense. As many benefits as there are in a tank stretching free on all sides, so many are there for a truth realizing Brahman in all the Vedic rites. Let then the motive for action be in the action itself and not in the event. Do not be incited to actions by the hope of their reward, nor let thy life be spent in action. Firmly persisting in yoga, perform thy duty, O Dhananjaya, and laying aside all desire for any benefit to thyself from action, make the event equal to thee, whether it be success or failure. Equal mindedness is called yoga. Yet the performance of works is by far inferior to mental devotion. O despiser of wealth, seek an asylum then in this mental devotion, which is knowledge. For the miserable and unhappy are those whose impulse to action is found in its reward. But he who by means of yoga is mentally devoted dismisses alike successful and unsuccessful results being beyond them. Yoga is skill in the performance of actions. Therefore, do thou aspire to this devotion. For those who are thus united to knowledge and devoted, who have renounced all reward for their actions, meet no rebirth in this life, and go to that eternal blissful abode which is free from all disease and untouched by troubles. When thy heart shall have worked through the snares of delusion, then thou wilt attain to high indifference as to those doctrines which are already taught or which are yet to be taught. When thy mind, once liberated from the Vedas, shall be fixed immovably in contemplation, then shalt thou attain to devotion. We give you our very own Shobha Sharma, PhD.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Monica. Um, I think this reading kind of sets the tone about what we wish to talk about today, friends. Today, we shall attempt to expand on the title first, Yoga and Will. A cursory glance at these two words lead us to define them in a certain way. So, generally, most people say that yoga is union. It's a certain form of discipline and exercise from the East, specifically from India. Meanwhile, will is interpreted as a determination to achieve things in life. As a student of theosophy, we realize that we barely scratch the surface of what these two words mean if we could feel satisfied with the above definitions. So let's dig deeper, starting with the word yoga. The word yoga or yoga, as it is stated in a Sanskrit, in the Sanskrit dictionary, means several things. When I look it up, it says use, application, managing, magical art, and then it says system of meditation. If you go further and look at William Quan Judge's translation of the Bhagavad Gita, which we just heard from the second chapter, I need to say, first of all, that the reading that Monica gave from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita kind of sets the tone about where we are trying to go with this whole uh, presentation today on yoga and will. So what I'm going to do in the beginning is try to talk about what these words truly mean. How do we cursory, when we look at it and just think what yoga and will is, we hear these definitions many times from people. So many people think yoga is union, and then they call it a certain form of discipline and exercise from the East, namely from India. Meanwhile, the word will is interpreted as a determination to achieve things in life. As a student of theosophy, we realize that we hardly know what we are talking about when we just define these words like this. So I think we need to dig a little deeper. So, first, let's look at the word yoga. The word yoga or yoga, as it is pronounced in Sanskrit, has several meanings when I look it up. Yoga in a Sanskrit dictionary means use, application, managing, magic art, and then system of meditation. If you go further and look at William Quan Judge's translation of the Bhagavad Gita, from which we just heard a portion, he calls this word yoga devotion. Holding on to the last definition in the Sanskrit dictionary, that is the word meditation, and aligning it with William Quan Judge's interpretation of this word, we can see that meditation requires devotion. In The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 95, H.P. Blavatsky talks about pranayama or regulation of breath in yoga, quoting from the Anugita. She comments, this mode, however, with the previous acquisition of, or at least full understanding of the two higher senses, of which there are 7, as will be shown, pertains rather to the lower yoga, which she calls Hatha Yoga. The Hatha, so called, was and still is discountenanced by the Arhats. It is injurious to the health and can never develop into Raja Yoga. So it's very clearly stated. It's not just a form of exercise. Damodar Mavalankar was a mystic who initially was in the Theosophical movement and wrote many articles in the magazine called The Theosophist. A collection of these articles written by H.P. Blavatsky, Mr. Subbarao, a Vedantan also very close to Theosophy, and Mr. Damodar Mavalankar and others working with the movement was compiled in the book called 5 Years of Theosophy. So, one of the articles by Mr. Damodar Mavalankar called Contemplation, in that he corroborates the above quote by HBB, but says it in a slightly different manner. When talking about the two kinds of meditation, and he states at the outset, a general misconception on this subject seems to prevail. One confines oneself for some time in a room and passively gazes at one's nose, a spot on the wall, or perhaps a crystal, under the impression that such is the true form of contemplation enjoined by Raja Yoga. Many fail to realize that true occultism requires a physical, mental, moral, and spiritual development to run on parallel lines and injure themselves physically and spiritually by practice of what they falsely believe to be dhyan. Dhyan is also called meditation. So we realize, as students of Theosophy, the pitfalls and dangers in not understanding the proper way to approach yoga and rushing in where angels fear to tread. Now, when we look at the next word, will, not much is given in the Theosophical literature. However, it might help to take a few sentences from the Theosophical Glossary, page 370. In metaphysics and occult philosophy, will is that which governs the manifested universes in eternity. Will is the one and sole principle of abstract eternal motion, or its ensouling essence. Like all the rest, will is septenary in its degrees of manifestation. Emanating from the one eternal quiescent will, Atma in Layam, it becomes Buddhi in its Alaya stage, descends lower as Mahat, Manas, and runs down the ladder of degrees until the divine eros becomes in its lower animal manifestation, erotic desire. Will as an eternal principle is neither spirit nor substance, but everlasting ideation. So one must keep in mind that the preface to the Theosophical Glossary points out that this is a partial posthumous work because H.P. Blavatsky only looked over the first 32 pages in proof for this book before departing from this physical world. Yet, this shows us that will is a sacred principle and can be used in 7 degrees, at least in our lives. Some more references to will. In the preface to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Roman numeral page 14, William Quan Judd says, it, when he's talking about will, seems to be inferred either as well understood and admitted or as being one of the powers of the soul itself and not to be discussed. Yet he adds, will is a spiritual power function or attribute constantly present in every portion of the universe. It is a colorless power to which no quality of goodness or badness is to be assigned, but which may be used in whatever way man pleases. This is a further affirmation of what is said above. So, Now we understand that will may be used in the ordinary worldly definition of achieving what we need as desires, which are all pertaining to the earth, worldly. Or you could go beyond it and wield it as a power used by the purified human being. And William Cohen Judge affirms this later on, pages 15 and 16 of the preface, when he states so eloquently: the system postulates that Ishvara, the spirit in man, is untouched by any troubles, works, fruit of works, or desires. And when a firm position is assumed with the end in view of reaching union with spirit to concentration, he comes to the aid of the lower self and raises it gradually to higher planes. So, in this process, the will by degrees is given a stronger and stronger tendency to act upon a different line than that indicated by passion and desire. One more reference about will, and this is from Mr. Subbarao's article, The 12 Signs of the Zodiac in 5 Years of Theosophy. He talks about the sign Virgo, Kanya in Sanskrit, and says it represents the Saktis or powers. H.P. Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 292, refers to this article and talks about one of the 7 Saktis or powers, Ichha Sakti, as representing will. The Bhagavad Gita is filled with references that obliquely talk about this will and yoga. Hardly obliquely, I should say, because it's there throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Right in the 2nd chapter from which we just heard, we hear this, and I think it bears repeating. Let then, Krishna is speaking, let then the motive for action be in the action itself and not in the event. Do not be incited to actions by hope of their reward, nor let thy life be spent in inaction. Firmly persisting in yoga, O Dhananjaya, laying aside all desire for any benefit to thyself from action, make the event equal to thee, whether it be success or failure. Equal-mindedness is called yoga. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, this theme keeps coming up. Later on in the same chapter, Arjuna asks about the characteristics of a self-governed sage, and Krishna responds with these words to illustrate it. When in every condition he receives each event, whether favorable or unfavorable, with an equal mind that neither likes nor dislikes, his wisdom is established, and having met good or evil, neither rejoiceth at the one nor is cast down by the other. This message goes on directly through chapter 6 and continues in different forms to develop these qualities till the end of the 18th chapter. Now, I could continue quoting incessantly from this remarkable little book, but suffice if one remembers that each chapter is called by William Q. Judge the Book of Devotion, for the Sanskrit term Yoga Shastra. The link of will is intricately stitched in. All the above quotations on will and yoga can be summarized as follows. First, the union in yoga implies union with the higher manas within us. Second, yoga needs the power of will, which is akin to a phohatic force that guides the student in his or her journey on the path of meditation. As we get a clearer picture of these two words and their significance, we cannot forget that our actions are part of yoga and will. In the 12-step program in Alcoholics Anonymous, a lot of emphasis is placed on cultivating qualities like acceptance, detachment, humility, love, and balance. We, as students of Theosophy, can apply these ideas here. We need to remember that this duet of will and yoga takes place in the field of action, since we live and breathe on this physical plane. But it is understood that we blend in the paramitas of perfection to be practiced on a daily basis. The struggle between our higher and lower manas goes on in understanding and living the life of blending these two qualities of yoga and will. Conditioned by our karma, what is called mental deposits by Judge in his translation of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, we realize that the picture of our lives has so many strands, different dimensions to consider. And yet, at the same time, we need to continue to carry out all the tasks we need to complete in our everyday world. Verily, a balancing act of great grace and agility. This is where a true understanding and practice of the paramitas laid out so beautifully in the voice of the silence comes to our aid. Love of all, enshrined in dana. Balance that leads to patience in shila and shanti. Equanimity in thought, word, and deed. The midpoint paramita of viraga, of balance. And finally, virya and dhyana, which are these twin siblings of will and yoga, leading one to the final realm of true realization, prajna. I thought I would relate two well-known stories from Iran and India to talk about the struggles encountered in life and the way one overcomes it and lives the life that is embodied in this last paragraph. The first story about the birth of good and evil comes from ancient Persia, today's Iran. The god of time created the universe, and there is harmony all around. But he still feels that there is something missing here. He says, I need a companion to share all this beauty and harmony. He prays for a son for 1,000 years. Finally, he becomes pregnant. When he reflects on his action, he is filled with remorse, wondering if he has upset the balance of things. His worries cause their own disturbance because the son he is carrying in his belly divides into two. The legend says that just as good, Ormuzd, is born out of the Lord of Time's prayers, so also evil, Ahriman, is born out of his remorse. They are now twin brothers. The concerned father tries to make sure that Ormuzd comes out first. But Ahriman, being very intelligent and cunning, manages to push Ormuzd aside and comes out first. The father is extremely upset and decides to join forces with Ormuzd by creating the human race to work with the good force. This Persian legend tries to tell us that evil will always be around, but ultimately good will triumph. In Robert Crosby's article, posthumously published in Theosophy magazine, November 1919, he says that all creatures exhibit will. The will of spirit in action has produced everything that exists. Yet most species in the lower kingdoms use the intelligence they possess to seek what they like and avoid what they dislike. But man is a self-conscious being and is capable of aiming higher. The proof is in the fact that there are elder brothers, Mahatmas, who started out as ordinary human beings. How did they become Mahatmas? He states, they thought nothing of acquiring power and knowledge for themselves. They thought only of gaining power that they might expend it for the benefit of every living creature. In so doing, they opened the doors to the full play of the power of the Spirit within. We do the very opposite. We contract the divine power of the Spirit within us to the pinholes of personal desires and selfishness. There has to be an open mind, a pure heart, an eager intellect, an unveiled spiritual perception before there is any hope for us, says Mr. Crosby. Then he says that we need to be hungry for knowledge and realize that the elder brothers are waiting for us to get there. And he adds that the whole movement of true upward mobility is kept alive by the will of these elder brothers so that mankind can be benefited. Unless the qualities mentioned are practiced and lived every day, only then Ahriman can be defeated by Ormuzd. H.P. Blavatsky, in the Theosophical Articles, Volume 3, has a title called The Devil's Own and talks about the struggles between Ormuzd and Ahriman, saying that man on earth is so attracted to doing evil. And she states on page 104, man, following the Delphic injunction, has to become acquainted with and gain the mastery over every nook and corner of his heterogeneous nature before he can learn to discriminate between himself and his personality. To accomplish this difficult task, two conditions are absolutely requisite. One must have thoroughly realized in practice the noble Zoroastrian precept: good thoughts, good words, good deeds, and must have impressed them indelibly on his soul and heart, not merely as a lip utterance and form observance. Above all, one has to crush personal vanity beyond resurrection. Here, the union of yoga and will is illustrated in the clash between Ormuzd and Ahriman. Our next story comes from the Katha Upanishad. Nachiketa is the young son of Vajasravasa, the king. The father, the king, is giving away his possessions, and Nachiketa wonders, why is his father sacrificing old cows? But he doesn't say anything to his father about that. He just asks his father, to whom will you give me? And the father retorts in anger, to Yama, the god of death. Nachiketa takes it literally and decides to go on a visit to see Yama. He waits for the god of death for 3 days. Yama arrives and he is horrified that he made a guest wait. As atonement, he grants 3 boons to Nachiketas. So with the first boon, the young boy says, let my father's anger be appeased, and let him recognize me and greet me with love. Yama grants him his first wish. Then Nachiketa talks about the fact that there is no fear in heaven and asks Yama to teach him the fire sacrifice that leads to heaven. Yama willingly obliges and teaches him the steps to the fire sacrifice. And he is so impressed to see how quickly Nachiketa understands it all. So then he says, henceforth, this sacrifice will be called Nachiketa's fire. There's one more boon left. So Nachiketa asks, what happens when a person dies? Does he exist or not? What is the truth? Yama doesn't want him to go there, so he pleads with him, saying, I will give you riches, all the pleasures of life, but please do not ask me that question. Nachiketa responds, all of the earth's pleasures are transient. I am not interested in them. These are the senses' fleeting pleasures. I need to know this great mystery. Yama is very impressed and pleased with his response, and he knows that he is ready for the Gupta Vidya. The next several pages of the Katha Upanishad is filled with the secret knowledge. Nachiketa is satisfied and learns from the king of death the whole discipline of true meditation and yoga. This story shows us what true devotion linked with the power of will can achieve. Talking more about this, H.P. Blavatsky, in the notes under the heading Will and Desire in Lucifer magazine, 1887, starts with the concept that will is the exclusive possession of man on this our plane of consciousness. Desire, in its widest application, is the one creative force in the universe, and it is undistinguishable from will. However, she adds, man will never know this so long as he is just a man. Because the desire that men run after is of the lower manas and is unstable and ever-changing. So she states that man has a twofold task ahead of him: to awaken the will, to make it strong by use and conquest, and along with this, to purify desire. And she ends with this: knowledge and will are the tools for the accomplishment of this purification. What a fitting tribute to the greatness of Nachiketa. I will end my presentation with two quotations from the Jewel and the Lotus about yoga and will, respectively. In the words of Damodar Mavalankar talking about Raja Yoga, Raja Yoga encourages no shams, requires no physical postures. It has to deal with the inner man whose sphere lies in the world of thought. To have the highest ideal placed before oneself and strive incessantly to rise up to it is the only true concentration recognized by esoteric philosophy, which deals with the inner world of noumena, not the outer shell of phenomena. The first requisite for this is thorough purity of heart. Well might the student of occultism say, once again, with Zoroaster, that purity of thought, purity of word, and purity of deed, these are the essentials of one who would rise above the ordinary level and join the gods. A cultivation of the feeling of unselfish philanthropy is the path which has to be traversed for that purpose. For it is that alone which will lead to universal love, the realization of which constitutes the progress towards deliverance from the chains forged by Maya around the ego. No student will attain this at once. But as our venerated Mahatma states, the greater the progress towards deliverance, the less will be the case until, to crown all, human and purely individual personal feelings, blood ties and friendship, patriotism and race predilection will all give way to become blended into one universal feeling, the only true and holy, the only unselfish and eternal one, love, an immense love for humanity as a whole. In short, the individual is blended in the all. The next quotation is from William Q. Judge entitled Will and Desire. Will and desire lie at the doors of meditation and concentration. If we desire truth with the same intensity that we had formerly wished for success, money, or gratification, we will speedily acquire meditation and possess concentration. If we do all our acts, small and great, every moment, for the sake of the whole human race, as representing the Supreme Self, then every cell and fiber of the body and inner man will be turned in one direction, resulting in perfect concentration. This is expressed in the New Testament in the statement that if the eye is single, the whole body will be full of light. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it is still more clearly and comprehensively given through the different chapters. In one, it is beautifully put as the lighting up in us of the Supreme One, who then becomes visible. Let us meditate on that which is in us, the highest self, and concentrate upon it, and will to work for it as dwelling in every human heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Shobha. What an uplifting, wonderful presentation. You thoroughly covered the topic while including insights and thoughts from the Upanishads, from the Gita, from the Katha Upanishad specifically, and also from the Paramitas, which has a Buddhist orientation, Zoroaster, mystical Christianity. And just showing us how universal this the quest is really of the spiritual striving of humanity, and it was just so elevating, and we very much appreciate it. We have people here in the lodge who are welcome to raise their hand, and at least I can see them, and I'll call on anybody who has any kind of questions. Monica, you want to come up here, or you want to just doesn't matter? So okay.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Shobha, this was just so wonderful. Thank you very much. Listening to this wide array of examples from different teachers and belief systems, I began to think about this idea of strengthening the will. And so my question has to do with most people, even people who we could say are spiritual or religious and have a practice in some kind of way, think of strengthening the will for the sake of doing good. It's just the natural go-to, I think. And so my question has to do with the idea of strengthening the will to go beyond the pairs of opposites. How do we accomplish that in that way? Is it through the variety of focus that you gave us in the presentation? But this student is finding few places where that rising above the duality is what you're strengthening the will for, and how we're getting it done. So the student has a little bit of confusion about that. Could you speak about that?
Yeah, excellent question. Thank you. I think all our devotional books, after I started doing this, I realized that all our devotional books are talking about the same thing. But somehow I always find that the lighten the path using kind of a Zen-like approach by doing opposites, feels like contradictions, is really saying the same thing that the Bhagavad Gita says throughout. What is your motive? Right? What is your motive? So if you want to stop being a Cub Scout who is collecting badges for all the good he's doing, or people who give money in temples or wherever they do, and they put a big plaque there saying, I gave so much money. Is that why you do it? And throughout, that's not good. That's a false notion of what is good, because it completely crashes the idea of what is good. There is an absolute way of looking at good, and the Bhagavad Gita talks about it constantly. It says, why are you, the renunciation of action, right? The renunciation of the fruits, the renunciation of the fruits of action. Why do I, and this is why I say yoga and will we use every second of the day when we have choices. Every single moment we have choices, right? Every single moment. I see something on TV and I feel like throwing something at it. I have the choice of doing that or saying, well, this is the way it is, right? I have the choice there. So, what part of my will, what part of my meditation am I using? I mean, I love the way Mr. Mavalankar says, you can sit in a room, close the door, look at the tip of your nose, or look at a crystal or something. That's not meditation. It has to be every moment of the day, and that's what H.P. Blavatsky says. That's what William Coimji says. They're all saying it in different ways. But to me, after looking at this whole concept of will and yoga, I see how it is not something somewhere sitting somewhere. It's right here every moment of our lives. So this question of good and evil, this Ormuzd and Ahriman, it doesn't mean this is good, that is bad. And so I avoid this. Like look what Mr. Crosby says about intelligent species like insects and birds and animals. They avoid what is bad and go towards the good. But man, look at man. He has this manas in him. He has the choice constantly. And he realizes why he needs to do what he needs to do. He needs to realize it. Does he realize it all the time? So this good and evil is a very, how can I say it? This is 101 ethics, but true ethics implies understanding good and evil and appreciating that they all come within. Krishna says, I am the poison. I am everything, right? So once we understand that, we don't say this is bad, this is evil, this is good. So I think that's what we mean, like going beyond the pair of opposites. So I would love to hear from others, and I think your question is a beautiful question about good and evil.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shobha.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just take a look at the time here. We've got 26 minutes. No, is that true? Anyway, the meeting ends at the quarter of the hour, wherever you are. And so we've got almost 25 minutes now. So anybody should feel free. Don't wait till the last minute. And no question is a bad question. And did I see you, David? Did you put your hand up?
I guess I did, sort of by accident. But I do have I don't know. It's not exactly a question, but I noticed, in Theosophical Glossary under will, there's this one little part where I guess that's HPB's entry. I'm not sure, but
it is.
Yeah. That will is neither spirit or matter,
Right.
eternal ideation.
Right.
So it seems like, is that what will is? The motion of life?
It is.
Somehow as individuals, we harness it and direct it through our own ideation?
We qualify it, right? I think of it almost like Fohat. I don't even want to say Fohatic force, because I think it's a force that is there, and that's neutral. And H.P. Blavatsky's quotation that I read from Will and Desire brings the same idea of ideation. She says the same words. The reason I brought in that thing about the fact that she didn't finish reviewing her other pages of the glossary is maybe she would have formulated it in a different way. That's all. But it's all written by her, the glossary. The only thing is she only was able to review and edit the first 40 pages. That's what it says in the preface to the glossary. But I think that's beautiful, this concept of ideation. And so it's neutral. There is nothing. This is something that's repeated in different ways. William Conjad says that in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I wish I had it in front of me, but I don't. But I could find it if I go through my pages, but it will take too much time. But the main idea is, he also mentions, that's why not much is said about the will. Because but the hints that Mr. Subbarao says about the fact that it's the Shaktis, the powers, and then H.P. Blavatsky corroborates it in the Secret Doctrine, saying that it's one of those Ichha Sakti, which is Ichha in Hindi and in Sanskrit implies desire, a form of desire, right? So, but we've heard this statement a lot in Theosophy. Behind will stands desire, right? But what do we mean by that desire? It's not the desire, what we want this, we want that, right? The gratification of this, money, power. That's not the desire they're talking about. They're talking about the desire that is completely neutral, but is for the good of all, which the Mahatma's quotation also talks about. Love, universal love. For every living creature, right? Everybody is included in this, even the people you can't stand, right? I mean, we need to get rid of that. This is the beauty of this whole meditation and will, that we need to purify our thoughts, purify our words, purify how we act, all three. From the Zoroastrian quotation. And that is where the discipline of yoga and will merge. But they can't stand there alone without the help of the fact that we have actions, we have karma, we have that thread running through our lives. And then we have this whole thing about how we live the life with the virtues, the paramitas. So I think that's why it's neutral as it is. How we wield it gives it color, right? How we wield it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help?
Oh, yeah. And it seems like the idea of universal will, it's kind of saying that, everything from the cycles of the universe to gravity, it's all ideation or will is continuous.
Yes. The Mahatma letters talk a lot about gravity. It's fascinating to look at all that and see the I think I also like to go back to something in the 10 propositions that come at the end of Isis Unveiled, where H.P. Blavatsky, I think it's the 10th one, where she talks about an intimate, practical knowledge of magnetism and electricity in its true form. All this is a power, right? All these powers. And I think Mr. Subbarao hits it out of the ballpark when he says that it's a power, it's a Sakti. And that whole section in the summing up, I think it's in the summing up, that H.P. Blavatsky talks about the Saktis.
Robert, you had your hand up? He might have had to leave. He had his hand up for
hi,
a while.
Robert. There's Robert. Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much. That was a beautiful exposition of yoga and will.
Thank you.
The Mr. Judge, talks about the lifeline of meditation, but also sitting down for meditation at a particular time. And, and almost all teachers talk about periods of abstraction, attempt of union with the inner self, universal self. And in Patanjali's Yoga Aphorisms, it's called the 8-limb yoga, because you have the yamas and the niyamas, and you have the dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, what we usually think of as meditation.
Right.
But it also includes, pranayama, I can't remember the Sanskrit word, but the postures.
Right.
And the function of those in Patanjali is to quiet the body so that one can transcend it.
Right.
So he includes those. So when you sit down for meditation, isn't it helpful to be able to assume a posture that allows you to forget your body and have a rhythm of breathing that is conducive to quietude?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. I think one of the when I look through all this about will again and again, I see that we need to be the purity of thought, word, and deed. I think the article that, first of all, let me talk about the article where Mr. Mavalankar talks about why he kind of, he's kind of making a little fun about the way people approach meditation. But the most important thing is, do we have a pure mind? How is the mind? I think one of the first things that the second verse of the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras in the first pada, the first chapter, talks about the need to get rid of the modifications of the mind, the control of the modifications of the mind, right? And there's a lot of things talked about: fancy, sleep, memory, right cognition, incorrect cognition. Those are the 5 that are mentioned. I think these postures or whatever, all these things, it's like powers. Remember what the voice of the silence says right at the outset? These instructions are for those who are ignorant of the dangers of the lower iddhis, the siddhis, the powers. Now, these are all powers. Now, a Mahatma is ready to use all that. Are we ready to use it? And this is why H.P. Blavatsky, again and again, in her articles, talks about the dangers of Hatha Yoga. She says, the least problem is you injure yourself. The worst thing is you could die. She says that. So, as far as all these postures go, I don't think those things cannot be achieved. But where are we in that road that Patanjali is talking about? Are we ready? Are we ready for it? This is something I find we are cautioned about again and again, that how pure are our motives? Why are we doing this? The self-examination. So I don't think Patanjali is, but are we at that stage where we can do all that? Right at the beginning, we spend so much time in that first chapter talking about all the things we need to do to control this mind of ours. So it doesn't mean those things cannot be achieved, but my question is just, are we ready? That's all.
Yeah, but this question arises particularly because for many years I could sit in a semi-lotus position, which was extremely helpful.
Mhm.
But I got gout in my knees. I can't do it. Was an obstacle for sitting meditation,
Right.
not to be able to assume that posture. Also, I find that rhythms and breathing have a lot to do with control of the mind. So without pursuing hatha yoga or trying to get powers from prana, but to subdue the vesture,
Mm.
to subdue the brain, subdue the organs. In other words, to put to sleep the physical vesture so that one can enter the pure heart. That's the whole point, it seems to me, that what we're trying to do is have some sense of the real self. Because without that, what does anything else mean?
You got a good point, but I'm sure there are others who know much more than I do about this. So I will, I will just leave it with that.
Hello there, Shobha. I got a question here about
Yeah.
pranayama, and then we'll go to David Grossman. One thing I've heard about the pranayama breathing just recently this year came across somewhat of an injunction against controlling the breath and that we should just breathe normally. Now, pranayama breathing exercises, some of my new age friends here in San Diego are really, really fascinated about that and they love to do it.
Right.
So I'm kind of wondering if you could say, with this talk about hatha yoga, and my guess is that the pranayama is going to be part of that hatha yoga category of physical things you do with your physical body,
Yes.
opposed to the Raja yoga. Yeah, could you say
Yes.
what's the problem with the breath control?
Well, all I can say is this is something I've heard again and again in H.P. Blavatsky's writing about Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. And there used to be a book out called Raja Yoga or Occultism. I'm not able to find it where it is. Maybe it's not in some of our theosophical literature book library. Maybe I'm not looking at the right place. Somebody can help me with that. I was looking for that because she very clearly says that one needs to be very careful when one is going into this whole field of yoga and make sure it's the Raja Yoga where it is about the higher. And she talks about the several planes of yoga. So believe me, I know a lot of people who are into pranayama and everything. I feel I don't need to get into it because I'm ignorant about the whole process. And am I ready? Just like we said earlier. So that's my only thing about it, Ken. The question of this mortification of the body is not needed. And I remember if some of you, I'm sure a lot of you have read The Light of Asia, when Siddhartha is out there learning before he becomes the Buddha, he meets a lot of fakirs and rishis and munis, and he sees that there is a lot of hatha yoga going on. And he talks about it. Edwin Arnold talks about it. And I thought, wow. And he realizes this is not the path. And so I think there are warnings given everywhere. It's not just in Theosophy. We hear about the dangers of entering this kind of yoga, which is exactly why I feel today yoga has become very simplified. I don't deny the fact that it's a form of exercise, but it's more than that. And this is where this whole thing about controlling breath, doing all that, can be injurious to a human being who may not and may be doing it all wrong and getting into a situation where harming the body, and not just harming the body, may cause even death, which is something that H.P. Blavatsky has said many times. Now, why is that? What is the thing? It just goes to show that I think you can't enter into these areas till you are completely free of all the baggage we carry with the lower manas. So I think this is one of the reasons, whether it is will or yoga, you can easily use it like Ariman, and it can lead to black magic. So, which is one of the dangers of entering these kinds of um, positions and postures.
Why don't we go ahead and take David's question?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Actually, you were kind of moving in the direction I was thinking of. Usually, especially in the West, when yoga came over, it's mostly thought of as sitting cross-legged and meditation. You know, that's. But the Gita gives us, if you really think about the Bhagavad Gita, it presents all the yogas.
That's right.
Bhakti yoga, Raja yoga, Jnana yoga, Karma yoga.
Yes.
So when we put all these together, maybe yoga is something a little different. It's really has to do with refining and developing our whole nature.
Absolutely.
And so we could talk, we don't usually do this. We usually talk about, like Hatha yoga, but there's an aspect of Hatha yoga, which is health, the body. It's our instrument. We have to take care of it. It doesn't mean we have to become Kundalini yogis. You know what I'm saying?
This is what I mean. Excellent point, David. Because these Saktis, I mean, if you read The Secret Doctrine, she talks about all this. Yes, we have the power, but are we ready is the question that I keep asking. And the theme, the background, of all that I have read goes back to this. How pure are we, right? How ready are we? The Mahatmas are ready. Are we ready? That's why I asked that question, to know. And yes, some of the exercises that we do, cardio, etc., and all that, is good for the body. There's help. But you can't go crazy about all this and get into, this is the trouble, right? Whenever anything comes from the East, it's like it becomes a craze and people just get into it.
Could I ask, like, how, maybe we should ask the question, how do we develop Bhakti yoga or Karma yoga?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Bhavani Shankar in his, one of his, I think it's in his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, he talks about the different stages of devotion. And it's beautiful because I think that's where the true yoga comes in. That's why I love the fact that William Conn Judge calls it the book of devotion. And in Sanskrit, it's called Yoga Shastra. And Shastra means book, right? So the Shastras, they are the how to do something. So it's a book. And he translates it as book of devotion. And so I think it's this understanding of, like you said, the different kinds of bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, karma yoga. All of these are different ways. And it is said there, those who worship the gods go to the gods, he says. But those who worship with devotion, he talks about those two things, right? And then I think Arjuna asked the question somewhere earlier in the earlier chapters. You talk about renunciation of action and then you talk about devotion. How do we reconcile the two? And he says they're both the same. and he talks about the fact that when you renounce the fruits of action, you're being devoted to the one, the Paramatma. You're not caught up with this lower manas with its pull of desires and passions. I want this, I want that. That beautiful picture that was there for today's talk with the horses. I mean, how do you control those horses? They're like our senses, right? And it's such a beautiful picture of the horses and the reins that are being used by the charioteer Krishna, and how does one navigate? How does one understand and navigate the senses? This is it. The senses is what, bewitches us and leaves an unwary and abandoned wreck, like the voice of the silence says. Personally, after doing this exercise of doing my own research, I've realized that every single devotional book we use talks about yoga and will. They're talking about it in a different form, but they're saying the same thing. So and it talks again and again about the virtues. Voice of the Silence talks about the paramitas. Light on the Path talks about it in a different way, but it's talking about the same thing. How can we go into the higher if we are not ready down here? Kill out ambition, but work as those who are ambitious, right? Kill out that ambition. There's one place where she says, MC says something about do the right thing not because you will be you don't get unclean, right? You don't do it for that. I wish I could remember that, but that's such a beautiful thing to say. What's your motive? Why are you doing what you're doing? Are you doing this so that the evil doesn't come near you, or are you doing this so that you really care about everybody? Something to that effect. I'm mangling it right now. I can't remember, but if I could find that quote, I would. It's beautiful because it reminds us. It comes right in the beginning. It comes right in the beginning of the Light on the Path, and I just love that because it clearly tells us what's your motive. Why are you doing what you're doing? Are you doing it to get points? Are you doing it because you really care? So, and we as human beings are so good at giving excuses, right? And saying, Hannah Arendt said, the banality of evil. It is so easy to slip and slide into evil. It really is, and she talked about it. And I always think of that. How do we do the right thing? When you see people doing the wrong thing and then there are others who do it every night, my naive feeling is, oh, how do they sleep at night? No, I think they sleep very well at night because they justify all that. They justify it, right? And that's the banality of evil. It's so easy to slip and slide. And so being honest and straight is very hard. Slipping and sliding is very easy, which is exactly why we hear about the ethics again and again and again in our books. And in trying times, we've seen how people behave. Some stand up and fight, some succumb, right? Now, here's where we as a human being cannot look down upon the person who falls. We need to have compassion because we could be doing the very same thing ourselves. So I think it's this is why it goes back to Monica's question about good and evil.
Right. Oh, Shobha?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Gene has his hand up. Possibly.
Oh, okay. I don't see.
I didn't see it. Go for it.
Go ahead, Eugene, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your clarity. Just a question. I mean, we spend so much time, especially over the last years, since perhaps HPB's days, talking about yoga and meditation. When do we move beyond yoga and meditation?
When we are ready, right, Eugene? Are we ready?
I'm asking.
I don't know. I think, are we even, I think about, that is why I think about the story of Nachiketa. Look at his determination. Look at his, the will, the way he has guided his will at such a young age. He doesn't even want to hurt his father, right? So he doesn't voice what he feels about what he did. He didn't attack him. He just said, okay, so what will happen to me? And then the first boon he asks for his father. He doesn't ask anything else. First thing. So all I'm saying is what a difficult process that itself is. So I don't know. I feel like it to go beyond will and yoga, yes, but then you get to prajna. If I use my logic to get to it using virya and dhyana as parallels to yoga and will, or will and yoga. I don't know. I would love to know, Eugene. I'm ignorant here on this point. Well, how do we go beyond?
Can we rephrase it if we step it down a little bit and ask, when do we recognize that we are attached to meditation and yoga?
Mm. Mm. Oh,
There is a
that's where the motive comes in, doesn't it, Eugene? Why are we where the two parts come in, right? Is it for our personal state of nirvana that we are doing all this, or what is the motive for all this? What is this attachment?
There is next week, tune in, same place, same time. Our topic will be desirelessness.
Mm.
And I would like to just close by a reading. I think it might be the same passage, Shobha, that you were saying that you wished was a little closer to your fingertips from Patanjali.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the one that starts on Roman numeral page 14.
Uh-huh.
And it's the one really where it talks about there's no reference in the aphorisms to the will, even though the whole thing is about the will. It's
Right.
almost like maybe a fish in the ocean, not really analyzing the water. They're in the water. The whole thing is water. So anyway, I will read a little further down in that paragraph, which kind of points to the realm of question marks, which I think is in the realm of James' questions here. It says, the latter part of this big paragraph, when considered as that which in ordinary life is called will, we see its operation only in connection with the material body and mind, guided by desire. Looked at in respect to the hold by man upon life, it is more recondite, because its operation is beyond the ken of the mind. Analyzed as connected with reincarnation of man, or with the persistence of the manifested universe. Will has to do with the persistence of the manifested universe, by the way. That's recondite. Throughout a Manvantara, it is found to be still more removed from our comprehension and vast in its scope. So there's your question mark. So in other words, it's very deep, very profound, very cosmic, very universal. And so is your presentation, Shobha. I'm so grateful.
So much more to say. Thank you, Eugene, for making me think a little more about it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shobha. Yeah, next week is desirelessness. And let me read the quote for the week next week. It says, Vairagya, or detachment. Shobha doesn't like to talk about Vairagya. It's actually her favorite topic. Okay, so Vairagya, or detachment, is indifference to everything but the Supreme Spirit. Right. Rooted in a sense of supreme fitness and inner moral necessity. Right. So.
Yeah, that almost feels like will to me. But, I think like somebody, was it Wes, somebody who talked about the Paramita said every paramita has another one wrapped within it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Okay, well, thanks everybody for
Thank
your
you.
wonderful-
Thank you.
for your attendance and
Thank you, everyone.
Shobha. So
Yeah,
thank you all for your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shobha.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Be safe all.